I am 87 years old, and this summer I finally sat down and counted 6 things I had been doing for 30 years that made me stop wanting anybody in my house. Not 6 people. 6 things I did. I wrote them on the back of an envelope at the kitchen table, and when the list was finished, I was not ashamed of it, and I was not proud of it. I felt honest, maybe for the first time in years. Because a man can spend 3 decades keeping a door open and never once ask himself who he was keeping it open for. Come sit closer to the fire. I do not want to say this next part across a room. I am not telling you that people are a burden. I will not say that, and I do not believe it. I am not telling you to stop answering your door or to let a friendship go cold because you are tired, or that an old man is owed his solitude. What I am saying is narrower than that. There is a difference between company that costs you something and company you have quietly turned into work. Nearly everything on my list was the second kind, and every bit of it I built myself, one small accommodation at a time. And a thing you built yourself is the one kind of thing you can still take apart. My grandmother said, "A house that is always ready is a house nobody lives in." She told me that when I was 10, in her own front room. She had swept it that morning, the way she swept it every morning, and I asked her who was coming. She said nobody was coming. Nobody had come in a month. Then she sat down in the middle of that clean room and looked at it a long while and said, "I have been keeping this room for company, and the company is me." My grandfather set the other half beside her that same year. He said a man will carry a thing until he forgets he picked it up, and then he will call the ache his age. Her sentence and his sentence hold up every word I am about to say to you. The first confession is that I kept the house ready for people who were not coming. 2 good chairs by the window turned toward each other. A porch I swept before breakfast. A kettle I filled every single morning for years, in case somebody came up the road who might want tea. Walter came up that road every Sunday for 11 years, and then he did not, and I went on filling the kettle for another 6. Did I know? Some part of me knew. But emptying it felt like agreeing to something. My grandmother would have said what she said about the room, and she would have been right, and I would not have wanted to hear it. It is like keeping a road clear all winter for a wagon that stopped coming before the first frost. The work is real, the wagon is not, and the man out there with the shovel is not a fool. He is just somebody who would rather shovel than stand still and know a thing. Before I give you the second one, let me say one small thing and then leave it alone. I gathered the teachings behind all of this into a small book called The Native Way, 20 of them, for the later years. It is linked below and it sits in the first comment. Read one and sit with it overnight, that is all it asks. No pressure at all. It is there if your heart wants it, and if it does not, stay right here by this fire with me and we will go on without it. That is the whole of the asking. Now let me give you the second confession, because it is the one that took me longest to see, and it is the one I suspect some of you already know before I say it. The second confession is that I performed being fine for every single person who walked through that door. Not lies. Nothing so clean as a lie. I would stand up straighter than I stood when I was alone. I would make the coffee myself when my hands were bad that day. I would tell the good story about the winter and not the true one. And when they left, I would sit down in that chair and not get up again for 2 hours. The visit lasted 40 minutes. The bill came due for the rest of the day. My grandfather said a fire built to be looked at will not warm the man who built it. He said that about a neighbor who kept a showpiece hearth in a cold house. I was 51 before I understood he had not been talking about hearths at all. And here is the thing I want you to hear, because it is the part that shames people and should not. I was not being false with those people. I loved most of them. I simply could not let them see an old man having a hard day, and so I paid for their comfort with my own evening every time, and then wondered why company had started to feel like labor. The third confession is that I filled every silence with talk, because I was afraid of what the silence might say. You know this one. Somebody sits down and there comes that little gap, and something in your chest reaches for anything at all to put in it. The weather, the road, the price of things. I could talk for an hour and say nothing, and I would be exhausted after, and I never once asked myself what I thought would happen if I just let the quiet sit there between us. Now I think I know. I was afraid the quiet would tell them the truth, that I was lonely, and I would rather have been tired than seen. My grandmother said the wind only sounds lonely when it has an empty canyon to move through. She said the wind does not change, the canyon does. I have wondered since whether the people sitting across from me were doing the same thing, reaching into that same gap from their side. Two of us working hard so that nothing true would have room to land in the middle. Old Man Standing Pine, who taught my grandfather, had a line about that. He said 2 men can keep a silence out of a room the way 2 men keep a door shut in a wind, and neither one of them can ever put it down first. The fourth confession is that I said yes to visits I did not want, in order to avoid one conversation I wanted even less. There was a stretch of about 4 years where I had Eli, my son-in-law, out at the place nearly every other weekend. I did not want him there. He is not a bad man. We simply had nothing between us but my daughter, and both of us knew it, and neither of us would say it. So I said yes and yes and yes again, because saying no once would have meant saying the true thing out loud. That is walking the long way round a whole field for years, because there is one gate you do not want to open. My grandfather said a man will spend a year avoiding a thing that would take him 10 minutes to say. And what did those 4 years buy me? Not peace with Eli. We are exactly where we were, only older, and now with 400 hours of weather talk stacked up behind us. What they bought was that I never had to hear how my own voice would sound saying it. I have thought about whether he was doing the same, coming out here every other weekend to avoid the same 10 minutes from his side. I expect he was. 2 men can hold a gate shut for years and both call it kindness. The fifth confession is that I let other people set the shape of my day, and then I charged the tiredness to my age. This is the one that costs the most and shows the least. Somebody says they will come by in the morning, and the whole morning bends around it. You do not start the thing you meant to start. You do not go out to the shed, you wait. And then they come at 11 and stay till 1, and by the time the house is quiet, the day has no useful hours left in it. Do that twice a week for 20 years, and you will believe your body gave out. My body did not give out. My days were recut. A river does not choose its own bed after a while. It goes where the walking has already worn the ground down, and it will keep going there long after everybody who wore that path is gone. Was it their fault? No. Not one of them ever asked me to arrange a day around them. I did that, and then I resented them for it quietly, and that is the worst part of the whole confession. And you cannot hand somebody a bill they never agreed to. That is what I was doing, all those years, in my own head, adding it up. Nobody on the other side of that table ever saw the invoice, and if they had, they would have been bewildered by it, and rightly so. My grandmother had a hard sentence for this one. She said a man who gives more than he meant to will make somebody else pay for it, and he will not do it out loud, and she will never know what she did. She was talking about my grandfather that day. I did not understand it until I was the one doing it. The sixth confession is the one I would take back first if I could, and it is this. I mistook being surrounded for being known. For most of my life, there were people in my house constantly, family, neighbors, the men I worked alongside. I thought that was closeness. I thought a full room meant a full life. And then the room emptied out the way rooms do, and I discovered that in 30 years of company I had told perhaps 2 people anything true about myself. My grandmother said a stand of pines can grow so close their branches touch, and never once share a root. She said it looking at a windbreak on the north side of the place. Those trees stood shoulder to shoulder for 60 years, and the first hard storm took 4 of them down together, because not one of them had ever had to hold anything alone. Do you know what finally showed me that one? A funeral. I stood in a room with maybe 60 people who had all been through my house, and I could not have told you the hardest thing that had ever happened to any of them, and not one of them could have told you mine. We had been company for each other for 30 years. That is a real thing, and I do not want to sneer at it. But I had been calling it something it was not, and I want to say plainly because I do not want anybody hearing blame in this. That was mine to fix, and I never once tried. Not one of those 60 people ever refused to know me. I simply never offered. So there they are. 6. And every one of them is a reason I stopped wanting people over. Not because they were bad company, because of what I had turned company into. Now I want to say something careful, because I know how a list like that can land on a person. Naming these 6 did not mean I decided I had wasted my life. It is not the same as hating myself. That is the distinction I want to hand you, and I want to be exact about it because I had it wrong for a long time. These are things I did. They are not what I am. A habit is a path worn across a field. It is real. You can see it from the porch, but the field is not the path, and a field can grow back over a path in one wet season if nothing walks it. I was not a false man. I was a man who did not know how to be tired in front of anybody, and who built 30 years of small arrangements around that one thing. Is that a sad thing to find out at 87? It was for about a week, and then it was the opposite, because a thing you did is a thing you can stop doing, and a thing you are is a sentence. I have not become somebody who loves company again. I want to be honest with you about that. What changed is smaller. Last month, a woman from down the road sat in that chair by the window, and there came one of those gaps, and I did not fill it. I just let it be quiet. She stayed another hour, and I was not tired when she left. Let me gather this up for you now, the way my grandmother gathered the ends of her shawl. I kept the house ready for people who were not coming. I performed being fine. I filled the silences because I was afraid of them. I said yes to avoid one honest sentence. I let other people cut the shape of my days and blamed my age for it. And I confused a full room with being known. 6 things, and not one of them is a person. That is what took me 30 years and an envelope to see. I had been quietly blaming the visitors for a house I had arranged that way myself. Now I am going to turn it around, and you can answer these to yourself. Nobody else needs to hear it. Whose kettle are you still filling? What do you straighten up about the moment somebody comes through your door? What have you been saying yes to for years, so you never have to say one true thing out loud? And when the last person left your house, were you tired because you are old, or because of what you were doing the whole time they were there? And I know what some of you are asking right now, because I asked it myself with the envelope still in my hand. Is it too late for me? I'm not going to promise you anything. I am 87, and I have no business promising anybody a result. What I will tell you is what age actually left me, which was not strength and was not time. It left me the ability to notice one thing and to make one choice about it. That is all I had. It turned out to be enough for one quiet hour with a woman from down the road, and I did not know a quiet hour could feel like that. You are not further behind than I was. You just have not written yours on an envelope yet. So tell me which number was yours. Of the 6, which one sat down in your chest and would not get up? Was it the kettle, or the performance, or the silence you keep filling, or the yes you keep saying, or the days you let other people cut, or the full room you were never really known in? Tell me which number down in the comments, and tell me a little about it if you want to, because I read every one of them. And then come back and sit with me again tomorrow. There will be a fire going and a chair turned toward it for you.